The Liberty, they're now 1-1 on their three-game road trip. They've got a huge Rivals Week match against the Minnesota Lynx coming up on Saturday. Emma Meesseman, she continues to shine and also speak her mind. Kenney Burke, she's back from injury. The race for second place in the WNBA is tightening up. It's another edition of Liberty Lately. I'm Dexter Henry, joined by the great New York Post women's sports reporter, Madeline Kenney, here with me now. Maddie, what's going on?
Not much. I'm just in Las Vegas and just ready to go. I'm going to Minnesota next, so should be good.
Yeah, the people should know. I think we talked about this on Sunday. Maddie, very busy, traveling all over the place. You had a back-to-back, so you had to keep working.
Oh my
People don't
God.
understand how
Yeah.
tough that is for the reporters too.
It really is. And I don't want to complain because, I love my job and we have really awesome jobs. We get to watch sports for a living and
Yeah.
write and talk about it. But yeah, this schedule has been a little funky. Like the fact that they played in Dallas, flew all the way back to Brooklyn for one game just to fly all the way across the country to Los Angeles. And then you're playing Los Angeles and Vegas on a back-to-back. It's only an hour-ish flight, obviously, but it's still, back-to-backs are tough enough. And then to also add in travel,
Yeah.
it's not fun. Teams get a fly charter, so they're a little bit better set up than you and me, but we make do.
Yeah, you're right. They don't have to stand on the lines. I don't want to say the regular people with the rest of everybody else, right? Like they don't have to
Yeah,
do that, and that's part of it. If you could fly charter, you would. Come on,
I would.
New
Yeah,
York Post, we gotta make that happen. We gotta figure out something for Maddie to fly charter. But it's been an interesting schedule. It's even an interesting schedule for the Lynx, which I'll touch on later. But Maddie, Liberty, they're 1-1 so far in this three-game road swing. How would you assess their overall performance away from home this week, in a week where you told me on Sunday, hey, look, they need to bounce back after what happened against the Lynx? So how do you assess this performance with the win over the Sparks and then the loss to the Aces?
it was a little up and down. There's pros and cons to it, right? Like they did win in Los Angeles, but there was just no defensive effort. That was a total offensive showcase between the both teams. And yeah, LA is they're a really good scoring team. Not really a great defensive team, but the Liberty kind of matched their defensive efforts to what the LA's defensive efforts were, which wasn't great. Hey, but they still won, and that's all that matters. When it came against like Las Vegas, yes, they're playing on the second night of a back-to-back. That's always tough. I think that they had good fight overall. There were things to be, you know, like everyone wasn't really upset. They were upset by the loss because they felt like they could have won, but they also felt like they gave good effort. It was just the late game execution and not being able to make some of the second half adjustments like the Aces were. And that's kind of been like a reoccurring problem with this team is these second half adjustments. It just seems like other teams get it together and the Liberty can't match or find ways to beat them. So yeah.
Yeah, no, when I, and we're moving on to the Aces game, you talked about that. I thought that their defensive effort was a lot better to start, right?
Totally.
But
Mhm.
when you look at that loss to the Aces specifically, I think what stood out for me in terms of the execution was some of it. I was looking at watching the game and I'm like, is this fatigue? Because they gave up so many offensive rebounds, particularly in the fourth quarter. But what stood out to you the most about how they did have a lead in the fourth quarter? It was slim, but what stood out to you the most about how they let that slim fourth quarter lead slip away?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that the Aces were just a lot more physical. They
Mm.
were getting to the free throw line, and I tweeted out like just it's a fact that the Aces took I think like 16 or 17 free throws in the last 8 minutes of the game, and Liberty had 16 all game. I wasn't saying that wasn't justified. I was just pointing out like the Liberty didn't do a good job trying to get to the foul line. And when it came to like rebounding, that's been an issue that this team has had all year. Like Sandy, I can't even tell you how many times she's called out the team rebounding issues. And so it's kind of is getting to the point where it's a little concerning that rebounding is still something that we're talking about with this team and the amount of like offensive boards. Yes, they're trying to maybe get out and transition, but by doing that, they're leaving themselves susceptible to giving up second chance points. And so I think it's something that this team really needs to be able to figure out. Obviously, having a Brianna Stewart would probably change the outcome of last night's game, but she's not there, and you can't really use that as an excuse. So, it was more so just not matching the Aces' physicality, whether that's because of fatigue or this team's toughness has been questioned at times this season. So, that's something to continue to look on moving forward.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning. Toughness, and then another word you and I've talked about right recently is effort, right? Which we've heard a bunch of times, especially from Sandy Brondello. But somebody who's given a lot of effort, Emma Meesseman. She's been, I mean, it's crazy, ridiculously productive since joining the team. And I think the thing for me is she hasn't had that much practice time. Are you amazed with how quickly she's impacted this Liberty roster so far?
I mean, yes and no. I think that she's delivered on everything that the Liberty thought that she would bring when she came to the team, but I'm not totally surprised just because she is such a great player. She has such a high basketball IQ. I just kind of knew that, she would be able to figure it out. And she has. And I think having like that familiarity with a player like JJ, the way that they're able to play together. She did say last night after the Aces lost that she's really got to cut down some of those turnovers. But some of those turnovers are also just the fact that they haven't practiced. Like they're still building that chemistry. And when you add a new player who is as important to a team as Emma has been, you're gonna have some of those mishaps where you might think that somebody's gonna curl, but they're not actually doing that or whatever. And so, but Emma's been, absolutely incredible, reached double digit scoring in every single game that she's played in for the Liberty. I mean, she has really like her fingerprints are all over all these games.
Yeah, no, she's been tremendous. And you wrote it was after the loss of the Lynx earlier this week about how Meesseman made some very candid comments about the team needing to be more consistent and also working on fundamentals. What did you make of her blunt assessment, and how do you think the locker room took that? Because she's new to the team, she's just come on, and sometimes players may take that differently. But what did you make of what she said and how the locker room responded to that?
I mean, she wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
Like the attention to details, like the inconsistency with this team. I mean, she didn't take any personal shots. She kind of said that it was a collective effort thing. Like everyone needs to pay attention to the attention of details, or everyone needs to be paying attention in timeouts and stuff like that. I think that, maybe that's something that they needed to hear. And, Emma's not the type of player. She's very clear communicator. She chooses her words wisely, and even though English might be her second language, she isn't going to be the one that's standing in the front of the locker room and berating all of her teammates about how they need to be better. She said that her leadership style is more pulling a player to the side and maybe saying, "Hey, I saw this," or whatever. And she's like, "I would hope that teammates would feel comfortable doing the same thing to me." And that's just all about accountability at the end of the day. And so I think that, overall her words were taken well because they knew that she's right, and she also knows what it takes to win at this level,
Hmm.
and she knows what it takes. She's been on teams that should have won a title arguably and didn't, and I'm referencing the 2022 Chicago Sky team that she was on. That team was by far the best team in the WNBA that season, and they crumbled in the playoffs. And I think that maybe she's seeing some, I haven't talked to her about that, but maybe she is seeing some similarities in the way that both teams are going about business.
Yeah, I'd be very curious of what she would say about that 22 Sky team that I think a lot of us thought was going to win it all. Did not. Very disappointing. But when I think about what she said, it makes me think about something you and I talked about the last time we got on the video. Was we were talking about some of the stuff that Sandy Brondello had brought up with this team. And so I ask, is the directness and honesty and accountability that you mentioned from somebody other than Coach Brondello exactly what this team needs with the playoff push heating up right now? Do you think these comments from Meesseman, and she might show more of this accountability or need for accountability from her as a player, is that what this team needs right now?
I think so. And you look, Emma's not the only player that's been outspoken about the team's issues. I mean, Sabrina's talked about it. Natasha Cloud, after the Lynx loss, she also said that teams are challenging their toughness, and they're going to have another opportunity to respond. And they responded in LA. They responded for the most part in the Aces until that fourth quarter. But I think that this is part of winning a championship. You have to build championship habits, and this team has not done a good job at building championship habits. I know that they have so many injuries and they haven't been healthy for majority of the season. I think all but 2 games they've had a player on the injury report, at least one. They've been without JJ for a long time, and now they're without Brianna Stewart, like 2 very important players on this team. But there also can't be excuses. Every team goes through that, and so I think that it maybe is a little bit of a wake-up call, especially because they did slip out of that second place in the WNBA standings. Every game moving on is going to be important. They got to play with a sense of urgency as if they're at the end of the totem pole in terms of playoff standings. They have to try to maintain that and get back to that second place seed because home court advantage is so important.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's good to be noted that, look, the Atlanta Dream has now passed them. They're now in a battle for that second spot. We'll get back to that a little bit later, but you also mentioned injuries, which is something this team has dealt with all season long, Maddie, as you mentioned. But Kennedy Burke, she got back on the floor last night against the Aces after her injury layoff. How did she look in your eyes in her first game back, and how might her return impact the rotation, especially with players like Stephanie Talbot also earning minutes lately? How do you see the minutes distribution going for the Liberty here now with Burke back in the fold?
Yeah, and I talked to Stephanie Talbot actually before the LA game about her minutes and her workload, and she's like, I wasn't expecting to come in and have to contribute at this much. I wanted to come in and contribute to the highest level when I'm a competitor. I want to play, but just realistically looking at the roster, she knew that there weren't going to be a lot of minutes for her, most likely. She was more of a reserve type player, but because of the injury, she's played in a larger role. And she knows that as players get back, her minutes will go down, and she's fine with that. She thinks that maybe being able to play this many minutes has been good for her just in case they do need to rely on her in the playoffs or what have you. And so, I think Kennedy Burke, I mean, she had a good first game back. I thought she played well. Overall, she was moving well. She was, shooting well and everything. I mean, she missed a few threes and shots like that, but overall, she had a really good game. And she's only going to be able to build from there. So, yeah, I think Kennedy Burke, she's really important to what this team how this team plays and what they want to do.
Yeah, she's been having an absolutely great year, especially shooting the ball. You're right. In that game, she did have a couple of wide open threes, top of the key that she did knock down, but, she hadn't played in a while. That'll come as she gets her legs. Now, let's go back to Sunday because Liberty, they fell to the Lynx the last time they met. How big of a challenge will this rematch be in Minnesota on Saturday during Rivals Week? Actually, before I get there, is this a rivalry, Maddie? Like, in your eyes, is Lynx Liberty a rivalry? I feel like I'm going with no. I know they played in the finals, but I don't think it's quite there yet. What do you say?
They don't have the history. I mean, both
Right.
sides at this point have said that this isn't a rivalry yet. I mean, does it have the makings to be a rivalry? Sure. Has Cheryl maybe fanned the flames a little bit with some of her
Oh,
comments,
yeah.
whether, the Emma Meesseman made the wrong choice or Jalen is going to give us some corporate knowledge or whatever. I mean, look, Cheryl is just a funny person. I love dry humor. I know it's not for everyone, but no, I don't think that this is a rivalry. And if you ask players, they're not going to say it's a rivalry. If anything, they feel like maybe the Aces are more of a rival than the Lynx just because there's been more history. That's not to say that, if these two teams meet each other again in the WNBA finals, we're not having a different conversation this time next year. But right now, no, not a rivalry.
Yeah, I'm
And
with
you
you.
can't force rivalries.
Yeah, you can't force them. I'm with you, right? Like, I think if we get another matchup in the playoffs, obviously the finals, if they're the top two seeds, that's the only way it would happen. Then I think you can talk about it with the history, the regular season matchups, and look, the league should have done better in terms of scheduling these games between these two teams. The Lynx played
Yeah.
the Liberty 3 times in a row, counting the last 3 times they played. Well, Sunday, Saturday, and then next Tuesday, which is crazy. And they have 5 days off between Sunday and playing them set. I can get to the scheduling. But do you look at this as a big game for the Liberty here on Saturday?
Yes, I do because again, you're playing the team that has been consistently the best team in the league this season. Even though that they are without Nafisa Collier, they still are a really good team, and this is a measuring stick game for the Liberty. And I think that they really need to be able to step up to this type of challenge. Look, playing in Minneapolis, it is a hostile environment. Those fans are very passionate, and it's not an easy place to play, but the Liberty really have to step up in these moments and show that they do have toughness. They can play against really top tier teams. And they're not going to fold under pressure. And so I think this is a really important game that they need to go out there and play with just a higher level of urgency, a more sticking more to the execution and paying attention to those little details. And, because there was just a few, even watching the game, and I'm watching the game back this morning from last night, and there was just like some defensive mishaps, where maybe Melissa Smith, like she blew by JJ and there wasn't any help there, like there's just some miscommunication or just, slow rotations and stuff that the Liberty they're still ironing out. And I know they're without Brianna Stewart, and Brianna Stewart is, a defensive menace, but I think that this will be a really good test for the Liberty.
So you said you think it's an important game, but one follow-up here for me. Is this a must-win? Do you look at this as the Liberty have to win this game? Look, I know it's a game in August. Come down the stretch, 11 games left. Is this a must-win for the Liberty?
I think one of these next two games against the Lynx they have to win one of them. Whether I mean, you're going to get two tries. You need to walk out 1-1 against the Lynx in this stretch at minimum. So I do feel like it is very much a must-win situation for this team. I mean, look, they really can't afford to lose too many more games. I know that they're still, in the top 3 in the standings and stuff like that, but they really do want to get back to that second place seed. And so you got to win. You got to win out down the stretch. You got to make sure that there's, without a doubt, they got to close the door on Atlanta to make sure that Atlanta can't creep in, and or even Phoenix. It's kind of becoming like a log jam in the standings. So yeah, I think that this is that important of a game that it is a must win.
All right, I like that. Must win on Saturday, or like you said, Tuesday, because Liberty play them again back at the Barclays Center next week. We'll see what happens there. Now, Sandy Brondello, she became the Liberty's all-time winningest coach. That happened with the win against the Sparks on Tuesday. Is getting this team for Sandy back to playing championship level basketball, is that the biggest challenge that she's has here in New York since she's been in New York? Do you feel like that's her biggest challenge right now? We know getting them to win was one challenge. She's done that. They've won the title. But now, you've been talking about this, they're not playing championship level basketball. Sandy's got to get them back there. Is this the biggest challenge that she's had since she's been head coach here for the Liberty?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily it's the biggest challenge she's facing this season. And again, like I know injuries and the personnel, people being in and out of the rotation and lineup, yes, that is impacting this team's ability to build certain types of chemistry and championship habits. But I do think so. This team needs to play at a higher level, and it comes down to the players to a certain degree, yes, but it also comes down to the coaching and making sure that players are just prepared. Because I go back to that Dallas loss that they suffered, and they had that team meeting afterwards last month, and that game was very much, it looked like the Liberty were not prepared. Like they looked like they were so shocked by the way that the Wings were playing, and they just got absolutely embarrassed in that first half. And so, the players, they didn't say that, they said it's never the coach's fault that they lose a game, but to some degree it is. Coaches need to make sure that this team is setting the right tone early, and they've had better starts as of late. It's just that second half execution has been hurting them.
Yeah, it's not been good. Got to get better. I guess that leads me to the last, and we'll wrap up on here today, because if you're the Liberty, and you've talked about it, it's getting late early, right? Only 11 games left in the season. So for you, Maddie, what's the single most important thing that the Liberty have to get right before the end of this road trip to set the tone for the final weeks of the season?
I mean, I know we've talked a lot about execution, but this is part of execution, is just taking better care of the ball, playing with more of a sense of urgency, getting back, and for transition. I mean, their transition defense has been problematic as of late. And so I just think it's that, again, that effort that you play with, that sense of, pride. Like Natasha Cloud has talked about how proud, you're playing for the name across your chest and all that. But like, it just seems as of late that they just need to take it up another gear. There's another gear to this team that we haven't seen, or we've seen, but only in spurts. And I think that they really need to get into that top gear and really lock in and focus down this stretch, because you don't want to, the playoff picture is starting to form, and you want to make sure that you maintain your spot in that picture.
Yeah, that spot that they want is the number 2 spot. Can they get that? Can they get the home court advantage? It'll be very, very important, at least through the finals. At least they can get that, depending if they face the Lynx, but you want to get as high a seed as possible. We'll see what the Liberty can do. Big game. Maddie's calling it a must-win on Saturday, 2 p.m. tip in Minneapolis against the Lynx. See if the Liberty can finally get a win there. Maddie, You have been busy on the road. We're going to let you go because I know you still have not got all the information you need. I found out you're a Swiftie. You need to find out more information on this Taylor Swift album. So we're going to try to let you get back to that. I know you're really hyped about that, like our producer, Emma Kate. So we're going to let you get back to that. But another good week talking Liberty on Liberty Lately. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.